Welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Jason Gill at JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Taking a look at tonight's FanDuel main slate, which only goes from 405 to 715. So no Kershaw, but still kind of options to pay up for. And you're also kind of missing out on the Texas game and some cheap Dodgers value, which is a little disappointing. But overall, I'm kind of intrigued with this slate.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot more options than DraftKings tonight, that's for sure, and definitely a little nicer way to get cash games rolling, as is usual with one pitcher, sites. So I can dig this. I can dig it.
Yeah, and you look at Strasburg, 12K. I mean, you put him in your lineups and you got about 2,800 left over, a little more if you went sale. So kind of sticking in that range, I don't mind. A lot of guys in that price tag. Looking at catcher here, and I think Wieters at 2,900 is a guy who I'm kind of on a lot, just because Nova's struggled with lefties in his time, 361 WOBA allowed, and in that ballpark, as long as he's behind the dish, I think that's a reasonable price.
Definitely. And he's in a similar range to Butera on this one, so I think that kind of takes him out for me. Vot always sort of in play. Tougher matchup tonight, though. Victor Martinez. No. So, I think Wieters is the guy there, especially at that price.
Yeah, it's tough paying up for a Posey on tonight's slate. Victor Martinez with sale pitching, the Tigers are kind of out of play for me. But yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I think Wieters Vogt is a decent option there, coming off a strong game yesterday. And I think you can look down and kind of punt a little bit. I don't mind some of these guys, and the guy we've kind of ripped apart in the past, but Russell Martin, 2,400, I might take a look just as kind of a punt option in a decent spot.
Yeah, Tucker Barnhart, Kurt Suzuki. I mean, there's super cheap ones down here. So if you do want to pay up at other positions, again, like most nights, just throw it down there, see who's starting, and get it going.
Yeah, definitely. GT Realmuto, 2,600 is not a bad price. I'm not afraid to attack Cologne there from both sides of the plate. Looking at first base, and Ortiz could be in or could be out tonight, but I think either way, he's a guy you kind of look at if you're paying up. Hosmer, not quite the points per dollar value, but also, I mean, I can kind of see myself spending down to some of these other guys here.
Yeah, that's kind of a drag. Not Hosmer, not quite the value he was on DK, but what are you gonna do? You can't win them all, right? Chris Davis, decent punt, or not a punt, but a tournament first baseman, kind of like that. I mean, I think Encarnacion and another guy like that. We'll see how Toronto does in their third time against Wright, but yeah, I think those guys are decent options, but probably not the way I'm headed tonight in cash.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think you can kind of sit in that mid range. I mean, a couple guys I don't mind is like Justin Bohr going up against Cologne. I mean, 2,900, not a bad price tag for him. John Jaso as well. So I think you can kind of look at some of these guys and at that mid range. But overall, I think regardless, I think you want to kind of get a big upside guy in GPPs. But I don't mind coming down in cash.
For sure.
So second base here, and once again, I mean, Daniel Murphy kind of comes in as a top type guy, 4,400. You're also paying a premium price tag. I find it hard to pay up for him here just because Jason Kipnis is at 32. I think that's just a too cheap of a price tag, and cash game wise, that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Oh, Daniel, you hurt my soul yesterday, Daniel. Yeah, no, I agree with you on Kipnis. I think that's a great value. Even Panic here, not a bad value either. These matchups aren't too appealing to me. I do like Altuve, but I like Altuve in an Astros stack. I don't like Altuve as a standalone. So, yeah, I like Kipnis if you're paying down.
Yeah, Neil Walker's had some odd numbers against lefties this year. He's had some big power numbers, so I think he's kind of a play. 3,600, and he's not the 29 that he was a week ago, but definitely a guy to kind of mention here.
Definitely.
Derek Dietrich back in the lineup yesterday, so that was nice to see. I think some of these Marlins batter kind of come off as nice value. And you look at Vegas, I mean, it's a pretty relatively high over-under in Marlins Park there. So you can take that for what it's worth, but I think there is some decent value.
And then Starlin Castro, 2,400 against Tyler Wilson there. So that's something I'll definitely be taking a serious look at.
Yeah, I mean, that game's one of the higher scoring ones. I think really, I mean, both sides are pretty appealing on the slate here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else you're looking at?
Not really.
Second base doesn't really excite you much, does it?
No, not much whatsoever. I mean, Brandon Phillips is okay at 2,800, except he's playing against Strasburg, so not really.
Yeah. Third base here, and I think you can kind of look at that mid-range guy again. I like Jose Ramirez, 3,200. I'm kind of a fan of his at that price tag. I mean, he's been hitting the ball well, and I think this game's kind of a decent offensive game as far as both sides go. And on FanDuel, I mean, we're not really forced into using those names, so it's okay to kind of pick on them a little bit more here.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that call. Tough to pay up for the Toronto Bats tonight. I just don't know how it's going to work out with them against Wright, So Donaldson probably out for me unless I'm doing a super contrarian tournament type play.
Yeah, the way Wright's been this season, I mean, even when he's been off his game, he hasn't allowed the big blow-up game, which is something that's to consider. But maybe third time around, I mean, this Toronto team sees him well and kind of can get a hold of him. And, if they do knock him out fairly early, which has been tough to do to him this season, you're not getting a great bullpen, and that's something that Toronto can kind of feast upon.
Right. They're no Cincinnati Reds. But again, I think the Indians lower priced guy is another appealing option here, just like the other positions. It seems Jose Ramirez, 3,200. That's a guy I'm looking at. So I think in terms of that, I just think I'd rather pay down there. I also think there's some upside in this Washington offense, just because if they get to that bullpen, they did awful yesterday. They're probably going to be lower owned. So Rendon, 3,700. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Dan Strait. I mean, he's pitched relatively well. But, you look at his career numbers, and they're not great. And the 3.32 WOBA out to righties, 1.35 runs per 9 over the last 2 seasons or so is something that does put the Nationals bats in play, especially in that ballpark. So you got to like kind of those names there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking to spin kind of down a little bit more, it's kind of tough to find kind of guys that are below 3K that I'm in love with.
Trevor Plouffe.
Yeah.
2,600.
Yeah.
He's calling your name, buddy.
He had a nice game last night, but I don't know. I mean, what about A-Rod? What about A-Rod, man? He 1 for 4 with the homer, but
oh my God, I know he did it. It just was a week
it.
after I said it was going to happen. No, in the cheaper range, Matt Duffy. I think if you're going sort of with the Giants, he's a solid option even as a standalone for 2,700, and then Prado 2,700 as well against Cologne. So I don't hate that.
Yeah. And some of these Angels bats, Escobar hitting leadoff at 2,800 against Locke is kind of intriguing. I kind of like these Angels bats again. I mean, they're starting to come around. One, Locke is not a good pitcher, and I think recently I can target all these Angels guys for a cheaper price tag.
Definitely.
So, as far as shortstop goes, once again, I think you can kind of look at Machado up top at 4,100. The price tags don't carry quite as high as they did over on DraftKings, and Machado 4,100 in this matchup against Nova, I think is kind of the top guy in that range that I'm paying up for.
Yeah, I'm certainly making Indians moves here on FanDuel tonight. I can tell you that. But yeah, Machado as a top option. I like him, obviously. You're not totally worried about that matchup. So 4,100. much like the other Orioles, I think are a solid stacking option.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Brad Miller, 3,200 is the guy who I'm looking at against Santana. Santana, 3.35 over allowed to a lefty since 2014. Miller, I mean, if he's hitting the top of the order there, he's kind of a come down option for me.
Yeah. Gregorio Pettit at 2,300 if you're looking to purely punt. He's actually been doing pretty solid of late. So that's definitely a guy to look at there if you really are strapped for cash.
Yeah, and you look at that game, I mean, decent over-under out there in PNC. I mean, you look at Locke, I think these Angels bats kind of come into play just because of points per dollar, but also because it is a nice spot for them, and they've come around, so you can kind of trust them a bit more.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I like him as a punt, and I think really if Brad Miller, Machado is kind of the two of the guys that I'll pay up for in that tier 1, tier 2 range.
Right. Yeah. It's just not a strong position, but the top guys aren't priced up too much. And obviously, we didn't mention Bogarts yet. He's always in play, you know.
Yeah, hit streak done, but overall, I mean, the way he's been crushing the ball this season, and you look at Stroman. Stroman struggled tremendously against the Sox this season, so Bogart's certainly in play hitting third.
Right.
Looking at outfield here, and I think if you're paying all the way up, it might as well just be for Trout. I don't mind it, Bautista and GPPs. I'm not a big fan of Betts tonight, even though he's been on a nice stretch there. But I think at the price I got, I'd rather just lean Trout.
That's fair. I'm kind of in on Harper at 3,900, going back to the well there. Him and Worth, again, they weren't good last night, but I think this is a solid spot to go back to them. But yeah, if
Worth's solo homer wasn't good enough for you, Russell.
It was really just Daniel Murphy that I'm subtweeting right now. But Trout, yeah, I think he's a great option, especially if you have the salary to pay up for him in a good matchup. So if you can fit him in, I don't think he's going to be too high owned either. So if you can fit him in, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that is something to consider too, the drop down to Harper, about $1,000 difference, getting straight in Great American Ballpark. I mean, Harper's been relatively on and off really since that hot stretch, so you kind of got to catch him at that home run game. I mean, he hasn't had a multi-hit game in the last 10, so that is something that's a bit concerning. But overall, I still think park factor-wise, Dan Straley-wise, he's worth a look.
Definitely.
Mark Trumbo's price tag, a little bit better for you here, 3,800.
A little bit, but he's jumping into that area of power bats. And so if I'm going to ask myself who I like more between him and Batista, I'm probably going to still lean Batista. But, I mean, Trumbo is definitely proving something the last few weeks and sort of with all his power and such. So I'm probably taking it off from Trumbo, but I can always understand the play for sure.
Yeah, and I think it kind of puts a range of other options, like George Springer at 3,700, who I like a lot, Yoenis Cespedes, Lorenzo Cain. So there's kind of a lot of options in that 35 to 38 range that I'm really intrigued with tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Going lower, I mean, Jackie Bradley Jr., 3,400. I mean, that price has kind of slipped back down. I mean, it was up for quite a bit. I don't mind him as kind of a GPP play. It's weird that the Sox are still wanting to project for a high total, but we haven't really come across them as far as, guys we really like tonight.
Mm-hmm. I know it is strange, but I feel like they're just assumed now. Like, yes, you play the Red Sox, duh. You throw a stack in if you're making tournament lineups, duh. That's just kind of par for the course at this point. But but the values don't necessarily stick out, at the same time. Yeah, Worth at 35. I like that. Lorenzo Cain, much better price here than on DraftKings, so I do like that. And again, I'm not afraid of going at Cologne with some of these cheaper Marlins bats like Yelich, Dietrich, et cetera, et cetera. So I think those are good options.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Marlins here. I mean, Ozuna 3,400, Stanton 3,300. I mean, that's intriguing. I mean, Yelich, 35. Those aren't bad price tags for a relatively. You can get a Marlin stack in there with the Strasburg. I mean, if you're kind of looking to go that route in GPPs.
Definitely.
So
Yeah, I mean that's kind of appealing. Obviously Bartolo hasn't had that big blow up game yet, but he's not against it, you know?
yeah. And I think kind of something that we glossed over a little bit with some of the other positions is these White Sox bats, just because of how bad they've been lately. But I think at their price tags, I've kind of coming back to them. A guy like Adam Eaton, who's my like light bulb. I mean, they're playing Mike Pelfrey. I mean, it is a nice matchup, and even with the recent struggles, I think they are in play at their prices. So kind of going back to a Jose Abreu, a Todd Frazier, Eaton, I think they are kind of maybe people do overlook them like we just did, and you can kind of get them at a lower ownership.
I didn't gloss over them, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. I was going to talk about them right after you started saying that, but way to ruin the next segment. Okay. No, yeah, no, I agree. They have struggled lately and they kind of go off your radar. So even Melky 2,900, I mean, that's a pretty darn good price. So, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm with you.
yeah. I mean, Pelfrey 364 will allow to lefties over the last 3 seasons, 351 to righties. So they're in a spot where the White Sox can kind of do some damage.
Definitely. And if a Matt Holiday's in the lineup, I'm okay with him as a one-off in a tournament against Samardzija. I'm not afraid of Samardzija at this
No,
point.
no, I'm definitely not either. If you look kind of lower, I mean, Hyun-Soo Kim could be a guy to take a look at. Lefty there, Baltimore has hit pretty well of late, and I think that's kind of an intriguing option for that Orioles side.
Definitely. We talked about Ricard. No, if Ichiro's in the lineup, 2,400, always chilling, always a good value, even though he's 55 years old.
Yeah, but that's I mean to him he's still playing like he's 30.
Yeah, it's true. Well,
So
he is actually, but um, it's pretty amazing what he's been able to do this year. Even, I mean, at an advanced age. So
yeah,
crazy.
no, I definitely agree. What about a Byron Buxton punt at 2,200? Andres doesn't miss a ton of bats, and we saw last night. I mean, Buxton doesn't have to do much to pay off that price tag. One triple, and he was good to go because he was absolutely flying.
He's definitely got some speed there, so I'm okay with that. If he gets on base somehow, definitely has some stolen base upside as well. So yeah, decent call there.
Yeah. Let's wrap things up here with the FanDuel Punch Out. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all great tools and content.